Tim Pawlenty is not a chest-pounding, foot-stomping politician, but he is a bold leader because he executes on the toughest policies. He has executed and delivered on these policies, shutting down Minnesota government for the only time in their state history so he didn't raise taxes. He cut spending for the first time in 150 years of Minnesota government in 2009. He took on the unions, he reined in the pensions, the payroll, the perks, and he won. He is a warrior, he is a bold leader, and he's done this in a blue state. The land of Hubert Humphrey, Eugene McCarthy, Walter Mondale, and yes, Jesse Ventura. This is the biggest election of our lifetime, and we must oust Barack Obama from the presidency.
Or as President Obama would say, you're welcome. I am delighted to be here with this group at this moment in time in this state's history, in this nation's history. I want to thank Adam and the leadership for the good of Illinois. This is an organization that is so profoundly important to the future of this state and our nation. Concerned citizens coming together with the right values, the right vision, and the right passion for this state, trying to do what's best for their state and their communities and their families and the jobs that businesses provide. Let's give Adam a round of applause. As I travel the country, we've got great concern, and you well know what it is, but some of the measurements of it are this. Have you had enough of $4 a gallon gas? Yeah. Have you had enough of unbearable levels of employment? Yeah. Have you had enough of a federal government that is out of control and getting worse by the hour? Have you had enough of a federal government that enables big unions, big government, and their bailout big business buddies that scratch each other's back and raid your wallet? Yeah. Well, then we need to make sure we send the message, and this group understands it very well. In another chapter in this nation's history, there was a brave group of patriots that flown the flag with this message: don't tread on me. Yeah. Restore America's promise, and we know it needs to be restored. We need a president who will keep his or her promises to America. Amen. And it wasn't that long ago that our current president traveled this great land and made bold statements and bold promises about what he would do if given the responsibility and the opportunity to be the president of the United States of America. In fact, he encouraged people to use the slogan, remember what it was? Yes, we can. So now as we think about the promises he made and the promises he broke, I think the proper slogan when asked, did he break his promise, should be, yes, he did. Now let me give you a couple of examples of what we've seen in his rhetoric then and how he's governed now. President Obama stood before the American people and said, if you elect me president of the United States, he will reduce the budget deficit by half in his first term in office. Did President Obama break his promise to America? Yes, he did. President Obama said, you know, healthcare costs are out of control in our country, and in fact, they are. Our healthcare system is in need of reform, the right kind of reform. But this president and then candidate Obama stood in Iowa on the night of the Iowa caucuses in 2008. He looked the American people in the eye and he said, I know the burdens and costs of health care are rising too rapidly. It's becoming unaffordable for too many Americans. And he promised that he would fix the healthcare system with an emphasis on cost containment. He promised that he would do it with Republicans in a way that was bipartisan and was fully partnered with Republican and conservative perspective. And then he went to Washington, D.C. and jammed down the nation's throat one of the worst pieces of legislation in the modern history of the country. Did he break his promise to America? He said, you know, as president, we have to pass this stimulus bill. Or unemployment could go as high as 8%.
Oh, my.
Did he break his promise to America?
Yes, he did.
And the list goes on and on. But one of my favorites, in a bad way, is this. United States Senator Barack Obama, when faced with the question, should we raise the debt ceiling in this nation, grandstanded the issue, stood up in front of the American people and his colleagues in the Senate, and he said, it's an example, if you raise it, of failed leadership.
Yes.
And he voted no and said we shouldn't have a nation that increases its debt limit on its credit card, and similar comments. Now, when he makes that representation to America then, and now as president, completely changes his position. Did he break his promise to America?
Yes, he did.
Now, I got to give the president credit for at least one thing. He has proven that someone can deserve a Nobel Prize less than Al Gore. Buzz around and interest in Donald Trump and his potential interest in running in this race, and I think he's a person that has had wonderful success in many walks of life. But, and I'm not here to tell you much more about his candidacy than I think we should borrow at least one line from his TV show, The Apprentice. And when we look at President Obama and when we cast our votes in November of 2012, we should say to President Obama,
"You're fired!"
But to restore America's promise, we have to make sure that we remember and remind each other of what made this nation great. We are indeed the most successful, most prosperous nation the world has ever known.
Amen.
And what made this nation great is not a mystery. As we search for the answers, it's actually quite clear. It's actually quite simple. It's available for all to see. It is those common sense values and cherished traditions that made this nation great that we need to bring forward and apply to the challenges of our time. But they don't relate to government. We need to do this one school, one PTA at a time, one little league at a time, one church gathering at a time, one American at a time, and frankly, one Tea Party rally at a time. Now, this is best represented, America's promise and these values, by the thinking of our founding fathers. And they didn't just talk about it, they embedded it into the framing documents of this nation and the framing documents of our states. And they made it so simple, even politicians can understand, or should be able to understand. So let's start with that. And of course, the Declaration of Independence and other founding perspectives starts where it should all start, by acknowledging that this nation was created under God.
Amen.
The Declaration of Independence says we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. It doesn't say we're endowed by, with all due respect, our legislators. It doesn't say we're endowed by the county clerk or the local bureaucrat, or we're endowed by our member of Congress. These rights and privileges were given to us by our Creator. The Constitution guarantees and maintains those freedoms, but let's remember where it starts. And so for people who say, oh, Pawlenty, don't bring that up, it's politically incorrect, or some other comment, hogwash. They put it right in the documents, and in 49 of the 50 states, their constitution starts just like Minnesota's does, or similar. Ours says, "We the people of Minnesota, grateful to God for our citizens." So our Constitution goes on, of course, and begins with the words, "We the people." And it was designed to keep us free, and it was designed to make sure that it was written to protect our freedoms. It wasn't designed to protect the government or the bureaucracy from the people. It was designed to protect the people from the government. Sure that President Obama sees it the same way, or at least feels the same way about many of those issues, and we need to do all we can to remind him of these principles. And I think one of the things we should remind him of, the phrase, "in order to form a more perfect union," does not mean coddling the overprotected public employee unions. Now, I'm not one to question the president's birth certificate or the authenticity of it, but when you look at his policies, I do question what planet he's from. So what are these principles and values? I won't go through them all because I know it's a weekday and we have to get you back to your schedules and to your day. But here's a few by way of example. And now the first one's really hard to some, and there may be some Democrats going to watch this on video, so I'll say it slowly so even they can follow along. And maybe you just had a big meal and you're feeling like dozing off a little or something, but I'll say it slowly because it's a little complicated, but here you go. Are you ready? We can't spend more than we take in. Do it as an individual, you can't do it in your family, you don't do it in your business, and we can't let the government do it anymore. Just because we followed Greece into democracy does not mean we should follow them into bankruptcy. You saw Illinois or in Washington, D.C., it's really goofed up. Governor, it's hard, the interest groups are tough, the media's against us, whatever the excuses are. I mean, tell me about it. As Adam mentioned, I come from Minnesota. He read the list, but he missed a name. This is a state that elected Al Franken, U.S. Senator. So in my state, people think sometimes Massachusetts is the most liberal state in the country. They voted for Ronald Reagan twice. Minnesota never did. You remember that year? Some of you may be old enough to remember there was an electoral map up on election night. The entire country, a complete sea of red, all voting 49 out of 50 states for the wonderful, remarkable Ronald Reagan. One state did not vote for it.
No.
Guess which one it was? So my only point in sharing that with you, and this point, is not to be immodest. But when you do what we did, a movement conservative in a very liberal place, and you take spending below zero for the first time in 150 years, and we cut taxes, and we took on the public employees and won. For example, in the bus strike, we took a 44-day bus strike, shut down the entire transit system for a month and a half in one of the longest transit strikes in the history of the country, because the bus drivers, the government bus drivers, thought they should be able to work just 15 years and then have the government pay for their health care for the rest of their lives. So I went around the state and said, if you're not in government, how many of you get to work just 15 years and then have the government pay for your health care for the rest of your lives? No hands ever went up. I said, you know the bus drivers get that? They do. Do you know you're paying for that? We are. Are you with me in trying to get that shut off and changed? heck yeah, or worse than heck yeah, they never had to come down to the Capitol. So we had all of the same protests and strikes and all the stuff that you see in Madison, not quite as large, and people outside my bedroom window with signs. You know, Pawlenty is a weapon of mass transit destruction, but we won. And I told the people of Minnesota, the people who are paying the bill shouldn't be getting a worse deal than the people who are the recipients of the benefits. Yeah. The first state in the nation to offer, one of the first state in the nation to offer performance pay for teachers statewide, and pension reform, and tort reform, and welfare reform, and all the other things that are happening now in the country. We just did most of it before it was cool. So I share that with you, again, not to be immodest, but to tell you this point. I know from talking to many of you in this state and other parts of the state that there's a sense of sometimes discouragement in a place like Illinois, that maybe you can't do it. Yes, you can. If you can do it in Minnesota and make these kinds of changes like I did, as Frank Sinatra would sing about New York, we can do it anywhere. And you can do it anywhere. Now, one other just quick thing as a value. People spend money differently if it's their own money. So if you've got time to study government reform and stay up all night and watch cable TV, that's great, it's good information, or go to think tanks or read white papers, that's all wonderful. But if you just need to kind of cut to the chase about what's wrong with much of our government and how we need to fix it, just do this. On a given weekend, go to 2 weddings. Go to one where there's an open bar and the refreshments are free, quote unquote, and go to one where there's a cash bar. You'll see 2 very different sets of behaviors. Now, I said this in New York some weeks ago, and a Wall Streeter in the back of the room yells out, "Well, who even has a cash bar anymore?" That's about all you need to know, by the way, about the Wall Street perspective and problem. But if we're going to fix these systems, the answer in their worldview on the other side of this is drag it into Washington, D.C. Create a government-centric model. Have it be top-down command and control. Have it be limited size or one size fits all. Have the government regulated. Have it staffed by bureaucrats and government employees. Have it have all the dynamic and entrepreneurial qualities of Amtrak or the post office. And within 10 or 15 years, they'll run it into the financial rocks like they do everything else. That is not my vision of government reform, and I know it's not yours. The answer is we need to empower individuals and families to do what's best for them, to make decisions for what's right for them and their families. And we need to give them good information about price and quality and education and healthcare and everything else, and allow them to choose in a marketplace what's best for them. And if they need financial help, to the extent we can afford it, let's get it to them, but let's get it to them directly. Let's not run it through some big, mindless bureaucracy. That's the kind of reform we need in America. And we can't have this many people in the country so dependent on government to the point where we have more people riding in the wagon than we got pulling the wagon. And we're almost at the tipping point there, and you know what I'm talking about. So this is our moment, this is our time. And there's a lot of challenge, and the list goes on and on and on. But the things that we can do to get this back on track in the near term are this. We were talking at our table about the debt ceiling. I feel very strongly that our team in Washington, D.C. should not raise the debt ceiling and should force it. Making sure that we have limits on what politicians can do. I strongly support a constitutional amendment to make them balance the federal budget. In Prosperous Nation, we got to throw out this tax code and start over with a pro-growth, pro-business. In that regard, one of the things I think we should do is force members of Congress to do their own taxes without the help of an accountant, lawyer, or tax specialist. Let them experience firsthand every year the mind-numbing, time-consuming, intimidating, ridiculous, complex, burdensome, discouraging, anti-growth monstrosity that is our 9,000-page tax code in this country. It should be torn up by the roots and thrown overboard. Now, on that point, we got to stop the crony capitalism in Washington, D.C. We got a government that has special deals for some, and everybody else pays the deal. So we got these big Wall Street interests who get a bailout. The needy, understandably, get some help and a handout, and everybody else gets their wallet out. Yes. That ain't going to work. It's not working now, and we're on a trajectory to have that fail mathematically. So that's got to change. But we got to get this government growing. And for most people, their main pathway to a quality of life is whether they're going to have a job or not. And so this isn't about being pro-business, it's about being pro-jobs. Right. And the answer to people saying, well, all the politicians say, I'm pro-jobs, I'm pro-jobs. Well, if you listen real carefully, you can't be pro-jobs and anti-business. That's like being pro-egg and anti-chicken. And the answer to how do we best grow jobs in this state and my state in the country does not reside with the politicians, most of whom have never worked in the private sector in their life. The answer to how do we best provide jobs in this country, how do we best increase the likelihood that people will invest, start a business, grow a business, build a building, add employees, buy equipment, conduct research, commercialize it here, not in Asia. The answer to that question of how to best do that lies with the people who do it, not with the politicians. And when you ask them the best answer, you know what they say? Get the government off my back. Let me just conclude by saying this won't be easy. But most of the challenges, the great challenges and the great successes of this nation are not lessons in things that are easy. Valley Forge wasn't easy. Settling the West wasn't easy. Winning World War II wasn't easy. Going to the moon wasn't easy. This ain't about easy. This is about rolling up our sleeves, putting our shoulders back and our head down and plowing forward and getting the job done for the people of this country. We are the American people. This is the United States of America. Our founding fathers envisioned it. Ronald Reagan personified it. Lincoln did everything he could to courageously stand up and defend it. We are the greatest nation the world has ever known, not because of our government, but because of our people. We need to listen to our people. This nation under God, if we rally together and take back this country and restore this country in 2012, will have a new birth of freedom. We will be a nation by the people, for the people again. But it's going to take all of us. We're going to have our decision about who we want to be the standard bearer for our conservative movement soon enough. But when that process is complete, and I know you'll be involved in the meantime too, we need to rally together and sound the alarm like modern-day Paul Revere so the rest of our fellow citizens who aren't at this lunch hear the call, respond to the call, and join our cause to restore America's promise. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.